what we saw on Tuesday, as terrible as it is, could be minuscule if in fact God continues to lift the curtain and allow the enemies of America to give us probably what we deserve.
Well, Jerry, that's my feeling. I think we've just seen the antechamber to terror. We haven't even begun to see what they can do to the major population.
The ACLU's got to take a lot of blame for this.
Oh, yeah.
And I know I'll hear from them for this, but throwing God successfully with the help of the federal court system, throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools. The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this, because God will not be mocked, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
What don't they got the majority? Cause of the people in the real world. Carlos, I'm gonna try. Understand, you're on. I say, Carlos, you come about the news. Anybody press on the swimming pool. There's no place to lie about. Carlos said, you're alright. Carlos said, you're alright.
Did you invent the phrase moral majority?
I did. It was an odd situation. We had a meeting with Jerry Falwell that the late Ed McAteer had arranged. And Howard Phillips was to be at this meeting, but he was late. And Falwell doesn't waste time, you know. I mean, you have a meeting at 3:30, and he comes at 3:30, and he wants to begin the meeting, and he allocates 40 minutes for the meeting, and at 40 minutes, he's out the door. So McAteer was very nervous because Falwell came in, Phillips wasn't there. So he turned to me and said, would you give a briefing to Jerry Falwell here on the political situation? So I didn't know what to say, and so I said, well, out there you might say there is a moral majority, but it has been separated by historical and denominational difficulties, and if one could get those people together, you could constitute a majority in the country. And he said, stop. You said something out there is something, and I didn't even remember what I had said, and I started to say something else. He said, no, you said out there is some kind of a majority. I said, oh, moral majority. He turned to his guys and said, that's the name of the organization. I suppose the more important thing that I did was to try to bring together what is now known as the religious right. Those people were not active in politics, and I served as sort of a coach to get them active in the political process. And today, as you know, they're an important element in electing even the President of the United States.
We have a threefold primary responsibility. Number one, get people saved. Number two, get them baptized. Number three, get them registered to vote.
Only 55% of evangelicals were registered to vote at that time. The national mean at the time was 72%. So we had a lot to do there. We had to learn the laws and how we could and where we could register. So we began registration efforts in church lobbies, on church lawns, whatever the particular state law was.
Paul, how important is it for Christians to register to vote?
Bill, outside of attaining eternal salvation, I can't think of anything that's more important right now.
And you, ladies and gentlemen, you know, a few days ago, I addressed a group in Chicago and received their endorsement for my candidacy. Now, I know this is a nonpartisan gathering, and so I know that you can't endorse me, but I only brought that up because I want you to know that I endorse you and what you are doing.
Please welcome the founder and chancellor of Liberty University, Dr. Jerry Falwell.
You know, I've had two heroes in my life, many mentors, but two real heroes, Ronald Reagan and Jesse Helms. And I make no bones about it. They are the two greatest men I've ever known. When I started the Moral Majority, a few people in this room right here tonight, and this man especially, were the catalysts who helped me as a young preacher to try to put together millions of conservative Christians and thousands of pastors. We could get most of them in a phone booth who were willing to be activists back in the 1970s. And today, under Jesse Helms and later Ronald Reagan, and more recently, November last year, these people have made the difference in preventing this country from going to hell in a handbasket.
You needed that job, and you were the best qualified, but they had to give it to a minority because of a racial quota. Is that really fair? Harvey Gantt says it is. Gantt supports Ted Kennedy's racial quota law that makes the color of your skin more important than your qualifications. You'll vote on this issue next Tuesday. For racial quotas, Harvey Gantt. Against racial quotas, Jesse Helms.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice President-to-be, this convention, my fellow citizens of this great nation, with a deep awareness of the responsibility conferred by your trust, I accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States.
As you go about forming your new government and selecting the people who are going to head the cabinet, be in your cabinet, and run the government, how much consideration are you going to give to the advice of these new conservative organizations and the Moral Majority and people like the Reverend Jerry Falwell?
I am going to be open to these people. You are president of all the people, and I'm going to want to seek advice where I think that I can get advice from those who are familiar with a particular problem. I'm not going to separate myself from the people who elected us and sent us there.
This country has become lazy. I think we're going through a time now. Mr. Reagan gets the backlash from this. Notice the Lynchburg newspaper, wasn't the Cleveland paper, Lynchburg newspaper. There were 4 articles. One article told of a doctor in Boston who was criticizing the president for malnutrition in Boston among children because of the program, the so-called Reaganomics, that went into effect last October 1. Another article was criticizing the president for his so-called cutbacks on entitlements and the possibility of the aged being hurt. Then there was another article on his call for additional spending for warheads. And then another article on building a $50,000 or less dining room in the White House where the senior staff could meet and work at the same time. All of it intended to imply that Mr. Reagan is against poor people, he's against old people, he's against young people, he's for the war, etc., etc. I've never seen a man so savage by the national media since Watergate as is Mr. Reagan.
Reverend Falwell, you said God was angry at Hitler because he murdered 6 million Jews. You're a preacher, so you know more about God than I do. Don't you think God might be angry at us for all the hundreds of thousands of people we murdered in Southeast Asia and are continuing to murder in Central America by supporting bloody dictatorships.
Well, of course, that's your opinion, and I respect it. But I don't look on our attempt to stop or prevent another nation in Central America, El Salvador, from becoming another Nicaragua, another Cuba. I don't think that's murder. I think that's the protection of free people and the protection of the dignity of human life principle that I spoke about.
We can count 200 in this one village alone. They were mostly women and children, systematically murdered in just one day and night in December 1981 in the village of El Mazote. The killers belonged to a special battalion of the El Salvador Army trained by the United States. There were few survivors.
Sir, supporting the destruction of human life in Central America to protect the dignity of human life, isn't that situational ethics?
I don't think so. That's the one that I think that anybody who is looking at the facts will have to admit that Nicaragua is nothing more now than Castro and Brezhnev's conduit for revolution in all of Central America, eventually Mexico, and I think further north than that. And that we are simply protecting our children by doing what the president is doing there. I don't see that at all as any violation of ethics and the enforcement of ethics when one protects their children.
People of faith bring real energy because they have issues that they really are concerned about.
And none more so than the Reverend Jerry Falwell.
But I think most middle Americans, God-fearing, decent, family-oriented people, believe that we're in moral crisis. We have a country that's now aborting 1.5 million babies a year legally. We have aborting. We have a 40% divorce rate in America today. And we have a moral crisis. And the only way to change that is for people to get involved. We've got to become aware. We've got to become informed. We've got to deal with the homosexual explosion in our country.
What is the homosexual explosion?
Today, there's an attempt legislatively to make homosexuals a bona fide minority, like blacks, women, Hispanics, etc.
I don't believe in censorship, but I do believe that we parents and leaders have a reason to be concerned. That there is so little emphasis beyond Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons and one or two others on families where a man and a woman love each other and have children who love and respect their parents. There needs to be a role model other than the playing up on the minority problems that do exist. Sure, television should present life the way it is. But it should also present the fact that 93% of all Americans believe the husband-wife relationship is the ideal. And that means we don't have to promote homosexuality as an acceptable alternate lifestyle. I do believe in civil rights, housing, accommodations, etc. for homosexuals, contrary to what you bring. But I do not believe that we should condone it, whether legally or otherwise, as an acceptable alternate lifestyle. It is not that, it's moral perversion. And our young people need to know that, need to hear that. And while we should love the homosexual, we should deal with homosexuality for what it is, and that's wrong. And somehow, in the past several years, we've begun to make right what is wrong. And we're creating a syndrome of situational ethics in this country that is not good for the nation.
Homosexuality in Romans 1, for example, is called reprobate, and in the book of Genesis, it's called an abomination. And God condemns the men seeking after men. That which is unseemly is called perversion. What God has condemned, we don't feel that we should sanction. And just if we had no biblical background, obviously, a condoning of homosexual marriage and a moving of this society to that context would mean that one generation from now we'd cease to be, because homosexuals don't reproduce.
We're joined now by activists on both sides of the AIDS controversy. Reverend Troy Perry is moderator of the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches. He's also gay and a leader in the fight against AIDS. And Reverend Jerry Falwell, founder of the Moral Majority and pastor of the Thomas Road Baptist Church. Reverend Falwell, you've called for the closing of bathhouses and other measures, and you say you're calling for these measures to protect the health of the nation. But at the same time, you say AIDS is God's judgment on homosexual promiscuity.
I believe that God does not judge people, God judges sin. And I do believe that herpes is primarily caused by heterosexual promiscuity, and AIDS, generally caused and believed to be caused by homosexual promiscuity, is a violation, both of them, of God's laws of nature and decency, and as a result, God, who loves people, hates sin and deals, whether it's a drug addict or an alcoholic or someone who's living promiscuously as far as his or her moral life is concerned. We pay the price when we violate the laws of God.
My first memory of HIV, AIDS was in the 70s, about 78, before anyone even knew what it was. One of the neighbors got sick one day. Big, burly truck driver. And it was like hourly we were watching him just waste away. End of the week, he was gone.
I've compared it to the Holocaust because it came like a tsunami, and it was so overwhelming and so rapid. Each weekend I was officiating at a funeral, but in between there were multiple people who had died here in Austin or someone I knew somewhere else. And it was overwhelming, so you became sort of numb.
Reverend Perry, you're a priest, a preacher, and a homosexual. The statements that Reverend Falwell is making right now, is this what the homosexual community is worried about? That suddenly everybody remembers or begins to believe or has an excuse to believe now that homosexuality is a deviance, is morally wrong, or is an illness?
There's always been those individuals who believe that homosexuality is morally wrong. We who are part of the gay community, and I who, as you said, I'm a preacher, I'm a Christian, I preach the same gospel that Jerry Falwell does. I don't believe that any disease, I don't care what it is a gift from God to a class of people. I don't believe that sickle cell anemia is given to blacks by an act of God. I believe that diseases are the results of a lot of different things. When we start using words like that God has given, AIDS to homosexuals because, quote, as a result of their lifestyle, we're off the boat somewhere. People are dying. You can't even compare herpes, which heterosexuals have, to AIDS, which the gay community has contracted. You get an itch from herpes, you get death from AIDS.
One after another, and it would be, we go to a ward to go visit friends, and there would be new friends there that had just checked in. We'd go check on friends that had been there, that we saw yesterday. They weren't there with us anymore. They'd passed through the night.
Somewhere I started a list, and these are all of the names and the years of people in my life who have died. There's 77. Michael Milletta, he was the barber. John Baskin. Bill Palmatier was the organist at our church. John McDaniel, Joe Alves. They're from all over the world, primarily here in Austin. 77.
Reverend Perry, how worried are you about the political implications?
We're very concerned with this disease. We don't want anyone to die. We don't want political games played with this issue. We want to make sure that people don't die, that we take every precaution, whether we're homosexual or heterosexual, to make sure that individuals, whether it's from blood or from any other act, that no one dies.
Cure for AIDS and one sure cure for herpes. One man for one woman for one lifetime. It's called the traditional family. It's worked for 6,000 years.
Reverend Falwell and Reverend Perry, thank you very much.
always thought if more good people had concealed carry permits, then we could end those Muslims before they walk in and kill us. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to encourage all of you to get your permit. We offer a free course, and let's teach them a lesson if they ever show up here. So.